What happens when a Hollywood icon walks into a studio already vibrating with tension and decides he's done staying silent? The lights are hot, the audience is buzzing, the cameras are rolling, and no one, not even the hosts, are ready for what's about to unfold. Before we dive in, if you love explosive celebrity moments told like a movie you can feel in your bones, subscribe to Celeb Plus Tales right now. Hit that like button and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, because this story only gets wilder from here. The stage of The View looks the same as it always does. Bright panels, polished table, carefully rehearsed smiles. But beneath the surface, something is off. Johnny Depp steps out from backstage, his boots echoing softly against the floor, his rings catching the studio lights as if they're trying to warn everyone. He offers a small wave to the audience, a half smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. This isn't the playful, mischievous Depp fans are used to seeing. This is a man carrying weight. Years of headlines. Years of judgment. Years of being talked about instead of listened to. Whoopi Goldberg watches him approach the table, her expression unreadable. She's been doing this for decades. She's seen meltdowns, tears, walk-offs. But there's something in Depp's posture that makes her lean back just a little, fingers tightening around her mug. The producers in the control room exchange glances. One of them mutters, "Keep it tight." "We're live." Johnny takes his seat. The applause fades, but the energy doesn't. It hangs there thick, electric, like the second before a storm breaks. "So, Johnny," Whoopi begins, her voice calm, seasoned, welcoming but firm. "It's been a long road for you. A lot of public scrutiny. A lot of opinions." Johnny nods slowly, eyes scanning the audience, then the cameras. For a brief moment, it looks like he might keep it safe. He folds his hands, takes a breath. "Yeah," he says quietly. "That's one way to put it." The co-hosts lean in, sensing it. This isn't going to be a surface-level conversation. This isn't a promo stop. Whoopi continues. "People have watched your life play out in real time. Courtrooms, headlines, social media. Some feel sympathy. Some feel disappointment. How do you respond to viewers who say?" Johnny lifts his head sharply. Not angry yet. Not loud. But something has shifted. "Who say what?" he asks. There's a pause. A dangerous one. Whoopi doesn't blink. Who say that accountability matters. That fame doesn't put anyone above criticism. A murmur ripples through the audience. Johnny exhales through his nose, a humorless laugh escaping before he can stop it. He rubs his jaw, the way people do when they're trying to keep control. "Accountability," he repeats. "That word's been thrown at me like a weapon." Whoopi straightens. "It's not a weapon, Johnny. It's reality." And just like that, the air changes. Johnny leans forward now, elbows on the table. The camera catches the intensity in his eyes, darker, sharper than before. "Reality," he says. "Reality is waking up every day to see your name turned into a punchline. Reality is watching people who've never met you decide who you are." The co-host beside Whoopi tries to soften it. "But you understand why people talk, right? You're a public figure." Johnny turns to her, nodding once. "I do. What I don't understand is being judged by sound bites." Whoopi interjects, her tone firmer now. "Johnny, with respect, when stories come out." "Stories," he cuts in. His voice hasn't risen, but it's sharper, like glass. "Exactly. Stories." The audience gasps softly. Somewhere backstage, a producer whispers urgently, "Careful." Whoopi's eyes narrow just a fraction. "Are you saying the media just made everything up?" Johnny sits back, runs a hand through his hair. For a moment, he looks tired. Then he looks angry. "I'm saying," he replies slowly, "that once a narrative is chosen, the truth doesn't stand a chance." A beat. 2 beats. Whoopi crosses her arms. "So everyone else is wrong?" Johnny meets her gaze. This is the moment people will replay later, slow it down, analyze every micro-expression. "I'm saying," he says louder now, "that I didn't get a fair voice. And shows like this," he gestures around the table, "they shape that narrative." The audience reaction is immediate. A mix of applause and shocked murmurs. One woman covers her mouth. Another nods vigorously. Whoopi's smile is gone now. "We ask tough questions here," she says. "That's our job. And I respect tough questions," Johnny fires back. "What I don't respect is being talked over. Being decided." The co-hosts exchange uneasy looks. This wasn't in the rundown. Whoopi leans forward. "No one's deciding for you right now. You're here. You're talking." Johnny laughs again, this time louder, edged with frustration. "Am I?" He gestures toward the camera. "Or am I fitting into the box you already built?" A hush falls over the studio. Even the applause sign stays dark. Whoopi's voice drops. Careful, Johnny. There it is. The warning. Johnny's jaw tightens. Careful, he repeats. I've been careful my whole life. His hands are shaking now, just slightly. The camera zooms in, capturing it all. I stayed quiet while people made careers out of my pain. I stayed quiet while my kids had to hear things no child should. Whoopi opens her mouth to respond, but Johnny continues, the dam finally breaking. And now I sit here, expected to smile, to play the part of the redeemed celebrity, while the same platforms that tore me apart act like neutral observers. The audience erupts. Applause. Gasps. Someone shouts, "Let him speak." Whoopi raises her hand. Hold on. Hold on. She turns to the crowd, then back to Johnny. No one is attacking you here. Johnny's voice cracks. Not fully, but enough. It doesn't feel that way. For the first time, there's something raw in his eyes. Not defiance. Hurt. The studio feels too small now, like the walls are closing in. Whoopi softens just a little. Johnny, she says, people were hurt. People watched. They reacted. And I was hurt too, he snaps, the softness gone. But where was that conversation? Silence. A co-host tries to redirect. Maybe what viewers want to know is, what now? How do you move forward? Johnny turns to her slowly. By telling the truth, he says. Even when it makes people uncomfortable. Whoopi exhales, leaning back again. Truth isn't owned by one person. Johnny nods. No, but neither is judgment. The tension is unbearable now. Producers are gesturing frantically from behind the cameras. A commercial break looms, but no one wants to cut away from this. This is the moment. Whoopi looks Johnny dead in the eye. Do you think you're owed an apology? Johnny doesn't answer right away. He looks out at the audience, at the faces watching him like this is a trial all over again. Then he looks back at Whoopi. I think, he says slowly, deliberately, that humanity is owed more compassion than it gets. The audience explodes again. Applause crashes like a wave. Whoopi presses her lips together. We'll have to agree to disagree. Johnny smiles faintly, sadly. That's been the story of my life. The director's voice finally cuts in. We're going to break. The screen fades, but the energy doesn't. Backstage, staff rush around, whispers flying. On the set, Whoopi stares straight ahead, composed but clearly shaken. Johnny adjusts his rings, breathing hard, as if realizing only now what he's unleashed. And as millions of viewers sit frozen in their living rooms, phones already lighting up with notifications, one thing is clear. This wasn't just an interview. It was a confrontation. And it's only just beginning. The red on air light snaps off, but the silence that replaces it is louder than anything that came before. Johnny Depp sits frozen for a second, chest rising and falling, as if his body is still catching up to what his mouth just unleashed. Across the table, Whoopi Goldberg lifts her mug, takes a slow sip, and sets it down with deliberate calm. But her eyes never leave him. The audience doesn't know whether to clap or stay quiet. A few nervous laughs flutter and die instantly. Backstage, the producers are already arguing in hushed, frantic tones. We're trending, one whispers, eyes glued to a monitor where Twitter numbers are climbing by the second. We didn't even hit the break yet. Johnny rubs his palms together, then presses them flat against the table, grounding himself. He can feel every camera, even the ones that are supposed to be off. He can feel the judgment crawling back already. Whoopi turns slightly toward him, her voice lower now, meant only for the table but still caught by a stray mic. You okay? Johnny lets out a breath that sounds more like a scoff. I don't know, he says honestly. Am I supposed to be? She studies him for a moment. Not as a host. As a person. This show isn't a courtroom, she says. But you walked in like it was. Johnny looks up at her, eyes sharp again. Because every room feels like one now. The stage manager steps forward. 30 seconds, she says, trying to sound neutral, trying to sound in control. The audience shifts in their seats. They sense it too. Whatever's coming next will be worse. Or better. There's no middle ground anymore. Whoopi adjusts the papers in front of her, buying time. When we come back, she says to Johnny, I need you to hear the questions without assuming the verdict. Johnny tilts his head. And I need you to understand that some verdicts were written long before I walked in. The countdown begins. Fingers raised. 5, 4, 3. The red light snaps back on. Whoopi faces the camera first, her professional smile sliding into place like armor. Welcome back, she says smoothly, as if the last few minutes didn't just fracture the internet. We're continuing our conversation with Johnny Depp. The applause is hesitant at first, then stronger. Louder. Almost defiant. Johnny nods once to the audience, but his eyes flick to Whoopi. He knows she's about to press harder. She always does. Johnny, Whoopi begins. During the break, you said something off camera that stuck with me. You said every room feels like a courtroom. That's a heavy thing to carry. Johnny leans back. It is, he replies. Especially when you didn't ask for the trial. One of the co-hosts jumps in, voice carefully measured. But trials don't come out of nowhere. People watch things unfold. Johnny turns toward her slowly. People watched fragments, he says. Edited. Repeated. Amplified. Are you saying the public should have looked away? She asks. No, Johnny answers. I'm saying they should have looked deeper. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. And you think they didn't? Johnny's voice hardens. I think outrage is easier than understanding. A ripple of reaction moves through the audience. A few nod. A few shake their heads. Whoopi clasps her hands together. Johnny, when stories involve pain, especially involving women, people respond emotionally. Johnny stiffens. There it is. The nerve. I know, he says quietly. And I respect that. What I don't respect is being erased from my own story. The co-host presses on. But accountability is an erasure. Johnny snaps his head toward her. Neither is silence accountability. Whoopi cuts in before it spirals. So what do you want now? She asks. From the public. From the media. Johnny doesn't answer immediately. He looks down at the table, tracing the wood grain with his finger like it might tell him what to say. When he looks back up, his eyes are glossy, but steady. I want honesty, he says. Not selective outrage. Not convenient morality. Whoopi's tone sharpens. Morality isn't convenient when people are hurt. Johnny's voice rises for the first time since coming back from break. And whose pain gets prioritized? He asks. Because mine didn't. The audience audibly reacts. A low "oh" cuts through the studio. Whoopi straightens. You're a powerful man, she says. Power changes how pain is perceived. Johnny laughs bitterly. Power? He gestures to himself. You call this power? Yes, Whoopi replies without hesitation. Fame is power. Johnny shakes his head. Fame is a magnifying glass. It doesn't protect, it burns. The co-hosts fall silent. Even Whoopi pauses. Johnny continues, momentum building now. When regular people make mistakes, they're allowed to learn. When I make one, real or imagined, it becomes a lifetime sentence. Whoopi leans forward again. But Johnny, some would say the issue wasn't imagination. There it is again. The line in the sand. Johnny's jaw tightens. And some would say, he fires back, that truth was never the headline. The tension is so thick the audience barely breathes. Someone in the front row wipes their eyes. Another crosses their arms defensively. Whoopi exhales slowly. You sound angry. Johnny nods. I am. Anger doesn't heal, she says. No, Johnny agrees. But silence kills. That lands hard. Whoopi glances at the camera, then back at Johnny. Do you regret coming on this show today? The question hangs there, dangerous and sharp. Johnny thinks. Really thinks. Then he shakes his head. No, he says. Because at least now, no one can say I didn't speak. The audience applauds, longer this time. Louder. Divided, but loud. A producer's voice cracks through an earpiece. Wrap it in two. Whoopi nods subtly. Johnny, she says, softer now, you've said your truth. But understand, people watching will still feel how they feel. Johnny meets her gaze. I don't need everyone to agree with me, he says. I just need them to see me as human. For a split second, Whoopi's expression changes. Something like understanding flickers there. Humanity, she says quietly, is complicated. Johnny smiles sadly. That's all I've ever been. The final seconds tick down. Whoopi turns to the camera. This conversation clearly struck a nerve, she says. And conversations like these don't end when the cameras do. The applause swells again, mixed with tension, confusion, and something else, uneasy empathy. As the music rises and the screen begins to fade, Johnny leans back in his chair, exhausted. He doesn't look victorious. He looks exposed. Backstage, phones are buzzing nonstop. Headlines are already being drafted. Clips are being cut. Hashtags are exploding. Johnny Depp versus The View. Whoopi Goldberg responds. Uncomfortable television. A reckoning on live TV. Johnny stands as the cameras cut. A staffer approaches, unsure whether to guide him or avoid him. He offers a polite nod and walks off stage alone, boots echoing once more. Only now the sound feels heavier. In the hallway, he pauses, leaning against the wall, eyes closed. He doesn't know if he just reclaimed his voice or handed the world another weapon. Behind him, through the studio doors, the audience is still buzzing, still arguing, still choosing sides. And far beyond that room, millions of screens glow with the same question. Was this honesty or a breaking point? The fallout hasn't even begun. The hallway outside the studio smells faintly of coffee and cold air conditioning, a strange mix that makes everything feel unreal. Johnny Depp leans against the wall longer than he means to, one hand braced beside his head, eyes shut as if he can will the noise away. Inside the studio, laughter rises, too loud, too forced, as the show moves on without him, as if the moment that just cracked open millions of living rooms never happened. A publicist hovers a few steps back, unsure whether to approach. "Johnny," she says softly, "your phone." He opens his eyes. The screen is already lit up in her hand, vibrating nonstop. Missed calls. Messages stacking on top of messages. Friends. Lawyers. People he hasn't spoken to in years, suddenly urgent. "Later," he says. His voice is steady, but his jaw isn't. "I need a minute." She nods and retreats. Across the corridor, a monitor plays a muted clip of the show on a loop. His own face stares back at him, frozen mid-sentence, eyes intense, mouth half open. He turns away from it. He's lived inside that frame for too long already. Inside the studio, the energy hasn't settled. Whoopi Goldberg sits at the table, posture composed, but her fingers tap against her notes in a rhythm she doesn't usually have. One of the co-hosts leans toward her during a commercial break. "That escalated," she murmurs. Whoopi doesn't look at her. Truth usually does. Another co-host shakes her head. People are already picking sides. Whoopi exhales slowly. They always do. The producer steps in, voice low but urgent. "Social's on fire. Clips are everywhere. We're getting praised and dragged at the same time." Whoopi finally looks up. "Then we did our job. But the network? Let them call," Whoopi says firm. "I'm not apologizing for a conversation." The red light flicks on again, and the show continues, but something is different now. The audience isn't fully with them anymore. They're distracted, glancing down at phones, whispering, replaying what they just saw in their heads. Back in the hallway, Johnny finally pushes himself off the wall and starts walking. Each step feels like it echoes too loudly. As he rounds the corner, he nearly collides with an older crew member who's been with the show for years. "Hey," the man says gently. "That took guts." Johnny gives a faint smile. "Or stupidity." The man shrugs. "Same thing sometimes." Johnny chuckles under his breath and keeps moving. Outside, paparazzi have already begun to gather, alerted by someone somewhere who knew this would blow up. Shouts carry through the glass doors. "Johnny! Johnny! Do you regret it? Did Whoopi ambush you? Was this planned?" Johnny stops just short of the exit. His publicist catches up, eyes wide. "We can go out the back." Johnny looks at the doors, at the flashes already popping. For a moment, it looks like he might say yes. Then he shakes his head. "No," he says. "I'm done hiding." The doors swing open. The noise hits him like a wave. Cameras click furiously. Microphones are shoved forward. "Johnny, are you saying the media lied? Johnny, do you think Whoopi owes you an apology? Johnny, what about the victims watching right now?" He raises his hands slightly, not surrender, just space. "I said what I needed to say," he tells them. "If people heard it, good. If they didn't, that's not up to me." "Are you angry?" someone shouts. Johnny pauses, eyes locking onto the voice. "I was," he says honestly. "Now I'm just tired." He gets into the car, the door slamming shut like punctuation. As the vehicle pulls away, his phone finally stops vibrating long enough for him to look at it. He scrolls through notifications, headlines already crystallizing into something permanent. Johnny Depp erupts on the View. Whoopi Goldberg pushes back in heated exchange. A tense TV moment divides the internet. He locks the screen and stares out the window instead. Across the city, in apartments and offices and dorm rooms, people are replaying the clip again and again. Comments flood in faster than anyone can read them. He finally spoke his truth. This was uncomfortable but necessary. He played the victim card. Whoopi was right to challenge him. The lines are drawn with ruthless speed. In a quiet office at the network, executives watch the footage on a large screen. One leans back in his chair, rubbing his temples. We're going to hear about this. Another shrugs. We always do. But this feels different. Back at the studio, Whoopi stands near her dressing room mirror, makeup half removed, staring at her own reflection. The confident host the world sees flickers, just for a second, into something more contemplative. A producer knocks lightly. You okay? Whoopi nods. I've been doing this a long time, she says. Every once in a while, someone reminds you that the table isn't just a table. The producer hesitates. Do you think he was hurt? Whoopi finishes for him. Yes. Right. Also angry, she adds. Also human. The producer exhales. People want a winner. Whoopi turns from the mirror. This wasn't a boxing match, she says. It just looked like one. Hours later, Johnny sits alone in a hotel room, the city humming faintly beyond the window. He hasn't turned on the TV. He doesn't need to. His phone buzzes again, this time with a message from someone he trusts. You said what you needed to say. Proud of you. He stares at the words longer than necessary. For the first time that day, his shoulders relax just a fraction. Then another message comes in. And another. Not all supportive. Some sharp. Some cruel. Some reminding him exactly why he stayed quiet for so long. He sets the phone down face first on the table. In that silence, the weight of it all finally settles. He wonders if he went too far. If he should have softened his words. If honesty, once unleashed, ever really belongs to the person who spoke it. Miles away, Whoopi sits with a cup of tea, scrolling through reactions herself. She stops on one comment that simply reads, "Two truths can exist at the same time." She nods slowly, as if to herself. By morning, the moment has taken on a life of its own. Late-night hosts joke about it. News panels dissect body language. Experts argue over tone and responsibility. Every second of the exchange is slowed down, zoomed in, decoded. But in the middle of all that noise, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't just television. It was a collision of pain, power, and perception. And the impact is still spreading. Because when a story like this breaks open, it doesn't end when the cameras shut off. It lingers. It divides. And it demands an ending that hasn't arrived yet. By morning, the moment has hardened into history. It's everywhere. On TV screens glowing in quiet kitchens. On phones clutched in crowded buses. On laptops open at office desks where no one is actually working anymore. The clip loops endlessly. Johnny leaning forward, voice tight, Whoopi holding her ground, the audience caught between applause and shock. Every replay sharpens it, chisels it into something more permanent than either of them intended. The internet has decided this is no longer an interview. It's a referendum. Hashtags trend in opposite directions, rising like dueling flags. One side calls it bravery. Another calls it deflection. Think pieces bloom by the hour, each claiming to explain what really happened in that studio. Slow-motion breakdowns analyze Johnny's hands, Whoopi's pauses, the exact second the energy turned. And in the middle of it all, the audience, millions of people, argue like they were sitting at the table themselves. In one living room, a woman shakes her head at the screen. He finally snapped, she says. In another, someone whispers, that's what it looks like when someone's been silent too long. The truth fractures, refracts, becomes plural. At the network, emergency meetings are called. Executives sit around long tables, coffee untouched, eyes ringed with exhaustion. We can't control this, one of them admits. Another nods grimly. We never could. We just pretended we could. Advertisers call. Some nervous, some thrilled. Controversy means eyes, and eyes mean money. The line between outrage and opportunity blurs the way it always does. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg walks into the studio the next day with the same steady stride she's always had. But people notice the difference. The applause is louder, sharper, charged. She sits at the table and looks into the camera, aware that every word now carries more weight than usual. We had a conversation yesterday, she says calmly. It made people uncomfortable. That's not a failure of dialogue. That's often the point. Some applaud. Some don't. She doesn't flinch. Off camera, a younger staffer asks her quietly, "Do you regret pushing him?" Whoopi thinks for a moment. "No," she says. "But I regret that pain had to come out on live television for people to believe it was real." Across the city, Johnny Depp avoids the screens entirely. He's learned the hard way what happens when you watch yourself be discussed by strangers. Instead, he sits with an old guitar resting against his knee, fingers brushing the strings without quite playing. He's not angry now. He's reflective. A call comes in from someone who rarely calls. A fellow actor. You shook things up, the voice says. Whether people liked it or not. Johnny lets out a quiet breath. I didn't mean to start a war. You didn't, the voice replies. You walked into one that was already happening. Johnny hangs up and stares at the guitar. He wonders how many versions of him now exist in people's minds. The villain, the victim, the defiant star, the broken man. The truth, as always, is messier than any headline can hold. Days pass, but the moment refuses to fade. College classes debate it. Podcasts dissect it. Comment sections turn into battlegrounds. Everyone wants resolution, an apology, a confession, a clear winner. But none comes. Because this wasn't a story with a neat ending. It was a mirror. It forced people to look at how quickly they judge, how eagerly they choose sides, how easily pain becomes entertainment once a camera is involved. And maybe that's why it lingers. In the end, there is no triumphant walk-off. No final word that settles everything. Just an echo of a question that keeps resurfacing in different forms. What do we owe public figures? And what do we owe each other when the truth is uncomfortable? As the clips continue to circulate and opinions continue to clash, one thing becomes undeniable. That day on The View wasn't just about Johnny Depp or Whoopi Goldberg. It was about us. And now the conversation belongs to you. What do you think? Was it a moment of necessary honesty or a line crossed on live television? Drop your opinion in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if you want more explosive cinematic stories that pull you right into the heart of Hollywood's most intense moments, make sure you subscribe to Celeb Plus Tales, because the next story might be even more shocking.